For today, January 27th, we're talking about vulnerability and where you place that vulnerability when you share it. Is it weakness? Is it strength? What is vulnerability? And what happens when we are vulnerable with someone else? Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Candy. I'm a hypnotherapist who's deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, and I know how mindset shapes our behavior. So, in this series, I'm going to share my daily reflections from 3 different devotionals. The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one's a little more spiritual, non-religious. Also, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, which is a very modern Christian approach. And My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, which is a very classic Christian angle. My goal is to help you see how each one of these devotionals or these day books might shape your mindset a little differently. And if you're into that kind of reflection, please like and follow for more. Let's get started. So for January 27th in the Book of Awakening, Mark Nepo talks about how being vulnerable is something we kind of might naturally resist, or not necessarily naturally, but we go through times where we withhold who we are. And I think rightfully so. Not everybody's safe to do that with. And I don't think he's suggesting that you should just be vulnerable with anybody. But what he is saying is that when we are vulnerable, when we allow somebody to see not just our strengths, but our weaknesses, the things we are maybe ashamed to tell others or afraid to tell others. Think of someone that you have shared something very deeply about yourself with that maybe is something that is typically frowned upon, or, can be bullied, or just something maybe you're not quite comfortable with yourself. You're learning about yourself in this way. And that person, if they are a safe space, if they are a space of no judgment, space that can hold space for you to share these things, in that moment when you share those things, that you find a kinship with this person. You find a connection that you can only find when you are completely vulnerable, open. And I think that's just one of the beauties of like a close relationship, or even, a partnership, a marriage that is healthy, where this person knows you, they live with you, they see you're good, you're bad, they've been through good times and hard times, and they're still there walking with you. And this is something that changed my marriage radically, is when we just began to be vulnerable. We began to talk about things that we wouldn't have talked about when we were evangelical Christians, and or things that we would have maybe, but it just took so much courage to begin to talk about. And because we began to talk about, I remember opening up to my husband that I didn't think I believed the same way I once did, and he was on his own deconstruction journey without telling me. And so it just started great conversations and hard conversations, but we grew closer, and we developed this fondness for one another, this bond that was deeper than we had ever experienced before. And it still continues to this day. I mean, like, I have in my phone, he's my favorite human, because he is. I just love being with him. He's enjoyable to me. But I wouldn't have had that, 20 years ago. There was a time when I told him, if I felt like I was living with a roommate. I felt very disconnected from him. So we've put a lot of work into the relationship, and vulnerability is the biggest part of it. Being vulnerable, being willing to be vulnerable. And it's not a weakness. Takes so much strength to be vulnerable. And Mark talks about when you find this kinship with this person, or this connection. This kid does not have to just be with a person. You can be vulnerable in lots of ways, and feel vulnerability. Start with a pet, sharing something that is in your heart that you just don't feel like maybe you have a safe space. Share it with a pet. They're safe, they're non-judgmental, and it will feel good just to voice what you're struggling with. If you have a safe place to put a journal or an app that locks a journal, they have apps where it's locked and people can't get in unless they have the code. But in that kinship, what you find is a kindness that you can only experience when you are really known and loved. And I challenge you to just try to find that somewhere for yourself. If it's just speaking it out into the universe, imagining an ear listening, because I do believe source is listening, and there's love all around you. And as you give voice to what you're feeling, being able to expose where you feel weak, where you don't feel strong, I think if you can find actual people to share that with, you will find that they will be receptive. If they're a safe place, there are plenty of safe places. There are plenty of people out here. I know we get told all the things about all the bad people, all the bad things, but there are a lot of good people. And even the people that seem bad are just, they're not in the right space at this time. Doesn't mean they never will be. I've seen people change. I've changed. So just something to think about. Vulnerability. It's scary, but when you can actually get the courage up to have those hard conversations, you might be really surprised at how they're received when they're not done in the heat of an argument, but when they're done in gentleness and love in a safe space. It can radically change a relationship. I know it changed my marriage and my parenting with my children. In Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, today it's mostly about how trust is like this golden ticket to heaven or to bliss. You want life to go well, you want it to be less hard, just trust. Trust helps you rise above your circumstances. She also mentions that you should not lean on your own understanding, which this scripture is, it could be used different ways. Really, it was just like, what we see, you can't believe it, is what I was kind of raised. Like, don't believe what you see. And I know you can't always believe what you see. You definitely can't believe everything you hear and see on the internet, obviously, even though some people who taught us that tend to believe everything they see on the internet today. But with AI and stuff, getting even more messy, right? So believing on your own understanding it can be a tricky thing, because does that mean don't believe in how you've learned that the world works, or what you see, or what your own intuition, or because that's kind of how it was taught. So you just had to believe God when God said, you know um let's take for example, I was brought up to believe that to be gay was a sin. So if I were to lean on my own understanding, let's say I had a child come out to me, which I did, and I, I would want to love that child still, obviously, because love has no, um, it's unconditional. But a lot of parents, when they're evangelical and they're faced with this situation, they go, can't lean on my understanding. I have to kick them out. They can't be in my home because Jesus says it's wrong. Or so they've been told, right? And so see how that verse can go that way. It could also go, you think you know how it works in the world, and you think that this person, because they vote Democrat, are evil. But that's because you've been programmed that way. So don't lean on your own understanding. Get to know the other person. Find out, you know, trust that maybe there's some good in there. That it can go both ways, even when you're an evangelical Christian. So that one's messy. And I think that's the same for a lot of verses, obviously. But anyway, she goes on to say, don't rely on your own understanding. Simply trust and things will go basically better. Like when they go, if you lean on your own understanding, things are going to get dark and muddied, and there's a lot of twisting and turning, creating this image of a harder life journey. At least this is how I'm reading it. And I'm trying to be genuine in how I share what they're writing. But, this is just my perspective. And for me, a lot of those dark times, a lot of those dark nights of the soul, as much as painful as they are, they changed me in good ways. Like just simply I'm just going to trust God. And it sounds so angelic and innocent, but it's childish, naive, ignorant. And so I think that this is kind of, it keeps you from being vulnerable. It keeps you from really sharing your heart because no, just trust God. Don't lean on your own understanding. Just keep trusting God and be, put that fake smile on, because that's really what you're going to do when you're going through something painful. You need a place to just express how you feel without judgment, without somebody going, you can't use those words. You can't think that way. You can't say that. Instead, just really trying to understand you, even though you might not say the phrases that they like, even though you might not believe the same way they do. That's a much better way than just simply trust and life will just be this wonderful thing, or easier or smoother, in my opinion. And in my utmost for his highest, Oswald Chambers basically is just talking about don't be concerned about anything but your relationship with God. So nothing matters. Nothing at all in the world matters but your relationship with God. Not how you feel towards not someone, not how someone feels towards you, not how, maybe you have a broken relationship or you're suffering under certain circumstances. Don't think about anything other than your relationship with God. He already knows what your problems are. He knows how to fix them. He'll provide. Just kind of trust that. It's a similar message. Just kind of trust. And there is great comfort in trusting for the things that you cannot control. I will not deny that. There's great comfort in that. But it can also cause you to just stop looking for the solution. Stop seeking so you never find. Because you're just constantly just kind of pushing out critical thinking skills, any type of logic or reason, just blind trust. Blind faith is what people would call it. So basically in his message is your job is to just trust, keep your mind on Jesus. I guess that means to just think about Jesus all the time, 24/7, which is impossible. And that your relationship with God is top priority over everything else. And, they kind of taught this. They would be like, God first, then your partner, and then your family. I think it was, then your marriage, then your family, then your job. Because maybe it was God, family, job, or something like that. But God was always first. And so that might mean, like, let's say you have church on Sunday mornings and your friend is going to be in town and you haven't seen them in 20 years and they're only going to be in town Sunday morning. You have to make a decision, and then you'll make the decision, God first, I have to go to church. Sorry. It's ridiculous, but that is the kind of thing people do. I've seen it done. And it's sad because here's a flesh and blood human who wants to see you, who wants to connect with you. And that's wonderful and beautiful. And you'd probably have a wonderful time with them. But instead, you have to go to church because church is tied to God in, most people's minds that are in especially toxic religion. And they're going to put that first then. The church comes first. That's really what it boiled down to. And it's not the church as the people. It's the church, the institution, the system of religion. So that's all three of those. Mostly I want to focus on the vulnerability and how that can create beauty in your life. It can create a closeness with others. Just being honest with yourself too. That vulnerability starts with yourself, being willing to admit your weaknesses. And you might find that those weaknesses are strengths. Your shadow can be seen as strengths instead of running from the shadows or chasing the shadows where it feels like never ending, like you cannot heal inwardly. Stop chasing the shadows. They're there. And you can see them as strengths. You can let them be there without trying to run away from them, without trying to hide them. And as you allow others to see you in that fullness, you might find a kinship and a kindness that you've never experienced before. And I know this because it's happened to me. And I stopped depending on just trusting something outside of myself, and I trusted myself. I loved myself unconditionally enough to say, if this person that I'm going to be open with doesn't accept me as me, that's okay. It's okay because I love me. And it really does change. How you relate to yourself changes how you relate to others. So that's all 3 books. Take what you want from there. Do what you will with the rest of it. And have a great day. Remember, you get to decide what you devote your thinking to today. You might not be able to control every thought that comes in, but you can definitely decide what you entertain. And whether it comes from something I've said today or something completely different, choose wisely and set an intention that truly benefits you and those around you. And if you found any value here today, don't forget to like and follow. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and let's keep our minds on what helps us love ourselves and each other a little bit better every day.